What scares you? Darkness? Spiders? Snakes? Clowns? What about children? I'm Jean.
And I'm Derek.
And welcome to the Dr. Dread podcast, where we explore all things unusual, unsettling, and unexplained. Hello there, and welcome to the very first episode of our Dr. Dread podcast. And today, Derek, first question to you. Do children scare you?
Kind of. It really depends on the day.
So some days children are scary and some days they aren't?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, personally, I think children can be very, very creepy, especially in horror movies. They can be the creepiest thing in the entire horror movie. And for the elder millennials, whatever we're called now, who grew up with The Shining, like me, we can probably all thank Stephen King and Stanley Kubrick for that one. But anyway, creepy children we're going to talk about today.
Let's go. And so like, what kind of children?
Well, we've got three that we're going to talk about. We're going to start with Changelings, and then we're going to talk about the Green Children of Woolpit, and then we're going to wrap things up with the Black-Eyed Children.
Okay, so we're talking about kids.
Yeah, have you heard of any of them?
I've heard of the Green Children and the Black-Eyed Children, but I haven't heard of the Changelings.
Okay, you don't know anything about Changelings.
The Changelings sounds like a shitty band from the 90s.
Okay, they're not a band from the 90s. They are folklore from Europe and the surrounding areas. Oh, Lord, thank you. Now I'm never going to be able to read about changelings and changeling folklore without thinking about what a band called Changelings from the 90s might sound like. So thank you for that, Derek.
They would probably be pop punk.
Thank you. Now that's in my head. Okay, but anyway, so what would you do if you became convinced that someone in your family, someone you loved, was no longer that loved one and had been replaced with something else? Something that looks like your loved one, sounds like your loved one, but isn't. There's something that just isn't quite right.
I don't know. I've never been in that situation before in my life. What I'd probably do is ask them many questions, but
Well, that is the fear at the heart of a changeling folklore. So changeling legends are folklore coming, again, primarily from Europe and surrounding areas, and revolve around the idea that supernatural beings like fairies, elves, or trolls will secretly kidnap and replace a human, usually a child, sometimes newlyweds. It could be anyone, but it was most often children, and replace that child with one of their own and some offspring of their own, or sometimes another entity. There are some stories where what was left behind is like a piece of wood that was just enchanted to look and act like the human. But yeah, in all of the legends, regardless of what was left behind, the person or enchanted wood, whatever it was, is enchanted to look like the person that they took.
So a piece of wood was moving? Walking like a human?
Hey, those are just the legends. Usually it was a child of, the fairy, elf, troll, whatever it was that took the human. Usually they just like swapped children.
Fairies? So Peter Pan got a side hustle now? Swapping out children? He's got a weird, whatever gets you money these days, or, I don't know what goes on in the fairy underworld, but, I didn't know the side hustle was swapping out kids.
That's not a... it's funny you mentioned that. I actually had not... I was thinking about, modern interpretations of changelings and changelings that we've seen in media, and for some reason I did not hit on Peter Pan, but that's actually very good, because the Peter Pan story is kind of a changeling story. Give me just a second. When was Peter Pan published?
He had a group of kids. He stole those kids? He swapped them out?
Well, kind of. They were kids who got lost, and he kind of collected them and took them to Neverland, but,
Enter Sandman?
No, not Enter Sandman. Okay, let's see. J.M. Barrie, I know who published it. When did he publish it, though? 1911. So yeah, he probably heard changeling stories growing up, and that, made their way into his novel Peter Pan.
Huh. Well, I didn't. Everybody got a side hustle these days.
Yes, thank you, Derek. Now we all get to have that brainworm. Peter Pan's side hustle is doing work for fairies and trolls to swap out their children and bring them changelings.
I don't think a fairy could steal me because all I have to do is slap it like a fly.
Hey, in a lot of these folklore, fairies are not the tiny little Tinkerbell fairies.
What are they?
They are magical beings, some of them even human-sized, and they are to be feared. They are not just, tiny little Tinkerbell fairies.
Huh.
That's mostly Disney's creation.
Well, we can still throw hands.
All right. Well, anyway, so the basic folklore depends on where it actually came from. In Irish and Scottish traditions, which is Celtic folklore, it was fairies who were mainly believed to be stealing human babies and replacing them with fairy children, or sometimes an elderly fairy in disguise.
Elderly?
Yeah, elderly. Like if the fairies get old and they need someone to take care of them, they swap them out with a kid.
You think a kid can take care of somebody?
No, they'd swap the elderly fairy with the human child, and they'd leave the elderly fairy disguised as the human baby and take the human baby with them.
What? Okay then. So you're telling me these fairies could be like 100 years old and they're still gonna look like a kid?
Oh, they lived much older than that. The fairies were usually nearly immortal, but...
What?
So they'd be living a lot longer than 100 years. But even if they didn't, in fairyland, look like a child, they can enchant them to look like the kid, remember?
Oh, so they got some magic?
Yes, they got magic.
Can we?
Yeah, they got fairy magic.
Can we spawn could they spawn like a car?
I don't think they spawn cars.
I mean...
Remember, these legends are from well before we had automobiles. Derek, they're not spawning cars.
Well, you know what? Today we might be seeing Bugattis start flying out of the air.
Okay, if you see a flying Bugatti, then sure, go ahead and assume it's the fairies doing. But until you see that, I don't think the fairies are spawning cars.
Well, I just had to ask. It's an important question. What if I meet a fairy? What am I supposed to do?
Okay.
How do I prevent myself from becoming a car? What if I turn into a car?
They're not going to turn you into a car.
I don't know the possibilities of fairies. Like, I don't study fairies.
The only example I can think of a fairy turning anything into anything even resembling a vehicle is Cinderella, where the fairy godmother turns a pumpkin into a coach for the horses to take Cinderella to the ball. So I think you're safe.
I've never seen that before.
You've never seen Cinderella?
No.
Not any iteration of Cinderella?
No, so I don't know what you're talking about.
My dude! Okay, we're gonna have to fix that. But anyway, on to Scandinavian legends. Instead of fairies, it was trolls who were believed to swap out their offspring with human babies. And changeling myths in this region often focused on the physical differences of the changeling child, like unnatural growth, deformities, or precocious behavior.
So are these trolls tiny, or are they human size?
They're probably closer to human size. We'll get to an actual story from Scandinavia about a troll and human baby swap in a little bit here, and it sounds like they're closer to human size.
So you're telling me American media has been telling me lies the whole time about fairies and trolls and elves?
Yes.
I didn't know these. I didn't realize they made human-sized ones.
So yes, what your media that you have been consuming is telling you lies. They are not always tiny.
Well, what if it's an offshoot of a different breed? It's just an important question.
Well, hey, there are many different myths of things, so not everybody interprets them the same way.
You did all the research. You should know this.
I don't know everything. There's a lot of folklore out there about these things, okay? There's a lot.
Fair enough. I'm just here for my reaction.
Okay, fair enough. In German legends, changelings were sometimes identified by their inability to grow, as opposed to Scandinavian legends where they had unnatural growth. their insatiable appetite or other strange behaviors. And these stories often involved dramatic attempts to compel the changeling to reveal its true nature, which we'll talk about more in a little bit, about the methods for forcing a changeling to reveal itself.
What did you say about hunger? Unnatural hunger?
Yes, insatiable appetite.
What counts as that?
Insatiable means not able to be filled. So insatiable appetite means you are hungry all the time.
So you're telling me this thing could eat your whole fridge?
In the German folklore of changelings, yes.
Has it been to America?
Well, there is one story that is based on changeling folklore that we'll talk about that was here in America.
I'm just saying, has it been in America? Look at an American fridge. I'm just being honest. Everybody has one.
Okay, so if you have a fridge and you have not eaten the food and you are certain it wasn't you that ate the food and all of a sudden it's gone, then yes, you can blame it on a German changeling.
Well, how would it migrate?
Who knows?
Okay, I guess I don't have answers.
And finally, in Slavic folklore, which is the area that's Russia and Eastern European countries, supernatural beings like the Rusalki, or forest spirits, were believed to steal unbaptized children and leave their own children behind. So naturally, the takeaway from that is baptize your children so they aren't taken and you aren't left with a changeling.
Okay, then.
Yes.
Rusaki's. Am I pronouncing that right?
Rusalki. I think we're pronouncing that right. Again, I don't speak Russian, so I'm just giving that my best guess.
Huh. Okay. Or what are these? Elves? Or what are they?
I just said they're forest spirits.
Forest spirits.
Forest spirits.
So you're telling me trees are stealing children now?
No, I don't think that means they're trees.
Well,
These are not the Ents from Lord of the Rings, okay?
I've never seen Lord of the Rings either.
Yes, you have. You have watched Lord of the Rings with us. You just don't remember.
Yeah, because it's boring.
You did not just say that.
Yes, I did.
Oh, dude.
Why should a movie be 5 hours?
Okay, that is the extended versions, okay, and they are better than the theatrical versions.
It's still like 4 hours. You think I got 4 hours?
That doesn't mean it's boring.
Yes, it does.
Oh. All right, we are not going to talk about that anymore, and we're going to move on. So, knowing that the changelings will come and steal your children and replace them with the own, the obvious question to follow up with that information is why?
Yeah.
Why do they do that?
Yeah, why?
Well, there are several different reasons. Theory number one on that is to strengthen the fairy, elf, troll, whatever they are, community. These societies are often pictured to be in decline and facing challenges like dwindling populations and difficulty with these beings having children, for whatever reason. So human children are seen as vibrant and full of life and might be stolen to help rejuvenate their society.
Was there like a great elf war or something I didn't know about?
I'd have to do more research into individual folklore of these regions, but they might have stories like that as an explanation for why their populations are always on the decline.
Is that why there's fire in trees? Just being honest.
What?
Yeah, have you not seen the videos where it's like fire inside of a tree?
Okay, that is caused by lightning strikes.
Well, what if it's elves? What if it's fairies? Just being honest.
Okay, well, at the time when these when these legends were prevalent, if lightning did strike a tree and burn up the inside of it with a fire inside the tree, yes, they probably would have thought it was the doing of fairies.
It's a great fairy war.
But but yes, the fire burning inside of a tree is caused by lightning striking trees.
I just had to ask, what if it was fairies? What if we're not realizing it's a fairy war going on?
Okay, maybe it is a fairy war, and they are the ones who summon the lightning to strike the tree.
I also have a question. How do they fit them inside of a tree?
Fit what inside a tree?
A kid.
Why do you think the kids are in the trees? Where did that come from?
If they're living inside the trees, they have to kidnap them, bring them into the society.
Well, they're not necessarily living inside the trees.
Where do they live?
In wherever the fairy kingdom is.
Well, how do they get there?
It's almost described as like a parallel world, and we don't really know how they get there.
Oh, teleportation.
Sure.
I thought they were living in trees.
Well, they're not living inside trees. Okay, but anyway, yes, stealing children to help rejuvenate the society. And also, fairies might tend to just like certain traits that humans attribute, like creativity or, exhibiting particular emotions. They might be particularly attracted to humans who exhibit talents in some form or fashion, like musical or artistic talents.
They don't have music in fairyland?
Well, they do, but they appreciate good musicianship and good artistry, and so they might like humans who are particularly talented in those areas.
Okay, then that's a little weird, but I don't understand why they would want musicians and artists. I mean, most of the people...
You appreciate having good musicians.
Yeah.
So do the fairies.
Why would you steal them, though?
Because they want them. They want them in the fairy world.
Well, we're gonna have to fight over that.
Okay, moving on. Also, a reason the fairies might swap out a fairy child for a human child is to replace a sick or weak fairy. For whatever reason, it was thought that humans were better caretakers and had superior nurturing abilities to the fairies, which made them ideal caretakers for a sickly or weak fairy child. So if there was a fairy child that was in poor health, the fairies might drop it off with the humans and take the human child so that the fairy could be nursed back to health by the humans.
Yeah, that ain't gonna work.
Oh?
Nope.
Why is that not gonna work?
I mean, you think we know what goes on with the fairies? Like, you think we know what health they have? We don't have magic potions.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm not sure how different fairy anatomy from human anatomy is supposed to be in these stories, but yeah, so I'm not sure that the fairies really thought that one through, but that is the story and a reason for why they might do it.
I mean, they are probably not smart.
Okay. Anyway, another reason why children might be taken is some sort of punishment or retribution. If the humans did something that upset the fairies, like disturbing a fairy ring, damaging a sacred tree, or failing to leave appropriate offerings for the fairies, then the fairies might retaliate by taking human children.
How are we supposed to know? Where's the laws?
These were part of the legends in general that were just understood at the time, where there were certain things that you did to appease the fairies and certain things you didn't do because it would make them angry. To our next reason why fairies might take a human child. Also, sort of kind of like a fairy-human exchange program.
What?
Yeah, kind of. The idea was that it was like kind of like a fairy-human exchange program. Fairies would take a certain number of human children, with the idea being that if the humans knew that there were a certain number of children being raised in the fairy realms, then the humans wouldn't do anything that they knew would hurt the fairy realms.
That does not make sense. This is not a prisoner swap.
No, it wasn't supposed to be a prisoner swap. It was supposed to be akin to like how royal families in Europe would sometimes exchange children to go live with, the families would exchange children to go live with the other families in hopes of fostering like friendship and cooperation among the families.
Yeah, I bet that never worked out.
Kind of like how Theon Greyjoy in Game of Thrones went to live with the Starks.
How did that work out?
It didn't. Yeah, you haven't seen Game of Thrones because you were too young for that when it came out.
And I've never tried to watch it because I thought it was boring too.
Dude, okay, you are going to have to quit talking about the things you find boring. You really are. But yeah, maybe Theon's not the best example of that because that didn't really work out for anyone involved.
Who died?
Many people died.
Sounds about right.
Many people died as a result of that one. But anyway, also, Another, we've got two more reasons that the fairies might swap out their children for human children. It was also thought that the fairies might need humans for some sort of magical ritual. That human children were the source of their magical essence or life force, which the fairies needed to sustain their power.
What? So we're making human sacrifices?
We don't really know that they were truly sacrificed, but the humans just might need a certain number of fairy children in their realms to help sustain their magical power.
That sounds like a little bit of a sacrifice to me.
It kind of is. Okay, and last reason why the fairies might go take their human child, they were just interested in humans. Humans were seen as fascinating and very alien to fairies. They didn't understand humans, why they did the things they did, and they wanted to learn more about them. And so their method of doing that was taking some of the human children to grow up in the fairy realms.
That's a bad idea. So we're kidnapping to learn.
No one said it was a particularly moralistic view of things, at least in our understanding of what is moralistic. The fairies often had a very different view of morality from humans, but, we can do a whole deep dive into fairy lore in another episode. We're just talking about changelings right now.
That sounds a lot like kidnapping.
Well, I mean, it is kidnapping. Any sort of changeling exchange with the humans is kidnapping, and that's why changelings were often feared, because the parents don't want their child gone, even though the fairies often did leave another one in its place, because at its heart, it is kidnapping.
Yeah.
But anyway, so if you thought your family member was gone, you'd want to be able to identify a changeling, right?
Yeah, probably.
Yep. So these were the things that you were supposed to look for to identify a changeling. An unusually intelligent or cunning child for their age. This was particularly with children. So if they were unusually smart for their age, they were probably a changeling. Also, anyone who displayed odd behavior, especially in children, like either constantly crying, never crying, a lack of an appetite, or a ravenous appetite.
What?
Yes, basically extremes in any way were seen as odd, and probably made you a changeling.
Okay, then.
And also, of course, there were physical differences. If you were especially frail or sickly, or if you had some sort of odd appearance, so any sort of birth defect would have been seen as probably a mark of a changeling.
Back to the appetite thing. One's gonna eat your whole fridge, one's not.
Yes, and either way, it was a sign of being a changeling.
Okay, then.
So, if you thought somebody was a changeling, the next step, obviously, is you want to confirm that.
Yeah. How do we confirm that, Chad?
Yep, so there were methods for doing that. One in particular that was very prevalent was what was called the eggshell test.
Okay.
And the family members would do something with eggshells. There's a lot of versions on what they do with eggshells, but they usually involve something like brewing beer in eggshells, cooking a meal in eggshells, or even just placing eggshells around, because for whatever reason, the changelings were supposed to find eggshells hilarious.
What?
Yeah, so the ones just placing eggshells around, for whatever reason, it was thought that changelings would find eggshells hilarious, and so, like, if they just, like, fell down laughing over the eggshells, they were obviously a changeling.
So you're telling me I can just break an egg, cook an egg, and just walk around, just shove it at people's faces, they start laughing, then I'm supposed to, like, jump them or something?
Well, you're not supposed to jump them, but if they just start laughing at you holding an eggshell, they might be a changeling.
What if, like, I made, like, a circle of eggshells through the changeling in the middle, like, would I just, like, capture them?
If they couldn't stop laughing over it, yeah, they might be trapped. You might have the changeling just caught laughing hysterically in the middle of an eggshell circle.
What if I left them there for hours? What would happen?
I don't know.
Alright, I
I
guess
don't know that there's any legends that talk about doing that. Usually it's just a way of identifying them. But yeah, if you either brewed beer in an eggshell or cooked a meal in an eggshell, the changeling was supposed to say or do certain things that would reveal their true nature.
Like what?
A lot of what I found doesn't really say it. They're just supposed to say certain things that no human would say or do certain things that would be very odd behavior for a human.
Like do a backflip on an egg?
Maybe.
Okay, so I'm really confused why they like eggs.
In everything I found on Changelings, it really doesn't explain why they're so fascinated by eggs or find them hilarious. They just are.
All right.
So, obviously, this one's to be expected. Some sort of prayer or religious rites like baptism, prayers, invoking divine intervention is supposed to reveal a changeling.
So, like baptizing a Satanist, then?
They're fairies and trolls and elves. They're not Satanists.
Well, would it be the same thing? Would it just like make them start like shaking or something?
Again, I haven't found a lot of specific legends that say exactly what it's supposed to do, but it's just supposed to reveal them.
Okay,
and
then.
finally, threats or violence. In darker changeling stories, the changeling was subjected to harsh and cruel treatment or abandonment to force the fairies to swap the children back.
This sounds like we're about to go down a dark path.
It does get dark.
All right. What's the first story?
So before we get to the stories, real quick, I did look and see if there were any Native American legends about changelings, and none of the Native Americans used the term changeling the way European folklore did, but there are a few stories that share some similar traits. The Iroquois have tales of Genosqua, and I have no faith that I'm pronouncing that correctly, but Genosqua or stone giants who would sometimes kidnap people, including children.
Stones?
Stone giants, yes. Giants made of stone, it seems like.
What? What?
Yeah.
So we got stones coming to life and just taking people?
Yep.
Wow.
And the Cherokee have stories about the Nunehi. Again, no faith that I'm pronouncing that right. So anyone of Iroquois or Cherokee descent, I apologize for my butchering of these names. I am truly sorry. But the Nunehi are supposed to be benevolent but mischievous spirits who live alongside humans and do sometimes take children, although they're often said to raise them kindly and basically treat them as one of their own.
So why would they take him in the first place?
I really haven't found a reason why in what I've looked at. Again, I'm just doing very cursory research on these for similarities to changeling stories, but didn't really find a reason why. Just sometimes they do, but they do treat them kindly.
Okay. This is a little bit topic. Did you know in countries that don't have like ranch, they have for the Cool Ranch Doritos flavor?
So you mean like countries that don't have like ranch dressing and don't know what ranch is a
Yeah.
flavor? Okay.
Yeah. The Cool Ranch flavor is called Cool American.
Okay, yeah, that was really off topic and really random. But yeah, there's your random fact for the day. In countries that aren't familiar with the ranch flavor, they call Cool Ranch Cool American,
Yeah.
apparently.
I guess we're cool Americans.
Okay.
You know, I wonder why they call it Cool American. I just saw that.
Yeah, that is really, really random, but thank you for sharing.
Yeah, back to what we were talking about, like the people taking kids or something.
Okay, yes, back to changelings. So, okay. Let's get into some actual changeling legends. In Scandinavian legends, they were the ones who were usually very cruel to the children that they suspected of being changelings. It was believed that if a child was taken, parents could force the fairies or trolls to return the child by treating the changeling child cruelly, using methods that ranged from whipping all the way to placing the child in a heated oven. And sadly, this belief was so prevalent that in at least one case, a woman was taken to court for killing her child in an oven.
Wow, so we're baking people.
They were baking people under the belief that they were changelings.
350?
I don't know what temperature they had their ovens. They did not have digital thermometers on their ovens at the time. Oh my God, Derek.
It's just a question.
Oh. If you're listening, no, I don't know what the temperature is that they would have had their ovens for cooking people to try to force the return of changelings. Oh, Jesus.
What? It's just a question. People offended by questions now? I was just
Oh.
asking what temperature they set it at.
Oh, Lord Child. Well, you are being your father's child, so I should expect you to be that morbid. But despite the prevalence of legends involving cruelty, one of the most well-known Swedish legends is actually much nicer.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So we're not baking people at 350?
In this particular story, there is no one being baked at 350.
You know? Baby?
The number 350 is forever ruined. Thank you. But in this story, the parents of a young boy believed that their son had been taken by trolls. Because remember, in Scandinavia, it's mostly trolls who are responsible for this.
Okay.
And the mother was advised to basically beat the boy and force the return of her real son. But the mother refused. She couldn't bring herself to hurt an innocent child, even knowing that it was a troll child.
It probably wasn't a troll.
It's just a story. This was not an actual case that happened. This is just the most well-known story.
Oh.
But anyway, the husband, if the mother wasn't going to beat the child, he demanded that she abandon it in the forest. But she still refused. She couldn't do it. So, furious, the husband leaves them both and walks out into the forest.
Did you say his name was Furious?
No, he's furious, as in angry.
Oh, I thought you said his name was Furious.
No. No. The husband is furious, very angry.
I misheard you there.
Okay. All right, well, now that we're on the same page. The husband leaves both his wife and the troll child and walks out into the forest. And while he's there, he meets his real son, wandering free in the forest.
What?
Yeah. The son explains that because his mother was kind to the changeling child, the troll mother that the real son had been living with had been kind to him in return.
Okay.
And because the mother was willing to sacrifice her relationship with the husband so that she wouldn't be cruel to the troll child, the trolls realized they had no power over the human boy and released him.
You're telling me if they were cruel, they had power? Like, they gained power or something?
Well, from what the story seems to be saying, if they had been cruel to the troll child, then the trolls would have had the power and or authority to keep the human child and not release him.
What laws are we abiding on?
But because they were nice to him and because the mother gave up everything to be kind to the troll child, the trolls could no longer keep the human boy.
So, are they, like, brothers?
What, the troll and the human child?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they lived with each other's parents for a while, so they're not, like, related by blood, but you could kind of consider them brothers, I guess.
Half-brothers?
Sure, you can kind of consider them half-brothers.
I'm just trying to think what down the...
I don't know. Okay, I guess if it's always sunny in a place called Philadelphia, remember you gotta pay the troll toll.
What's the troll toll?
It's a joke from a show called It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
I don't think that's true.
Hey, that is true. You gotta pay the troll toll. But anyway, another version of this story was published in 1913 by Swedish children author Helena Nyblom, and I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. But she retold a version of this story, except instead of a young boy, it was a princess who was taken by the trolls.
I thought I heard napalm.
No, her name is Nyblom.
Okay, Nyblom.
Or Nyblom. I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Not napalm. Okay.
Not napalm. No napalm in the troll stories. Sorry.
Okay, got it.
But anyway, instead of a young boy, it was a young princess who was kidnapped. And the princess was swapped out with a troll girl. And as time went on, both the princess and the changeling troll child were having a hard time adjusting to their new lives. The princess was disgusted by the troll prince, who was supposed to be her future husband, obviously because he was a troll.
Okay, this is taking a weird turn.
Yeah. And the troll girl was bored by human life and was not happy with the prospect of her potential human husband, who she found to be very dull.
What do you mean very dull? Was he boring?
Dull, as in boring, not interesting.
Well, there are boring people.
Yeah, there are boring people, and apparently this prince was one of them.
I guess he was a nerd or something.
He might have been a nerd as compared to what the troll girl wanted.
Okay.
But anyway, so both of them were upset with the course of their lives. They were not happy with the way things were looking, so they both decide to run away. And both the princess and the troll girl wander into the forest, unknowingly pass each other in the forest, and the princess finds her way back to the castle. And her mother, the queen, recognizes her as her real daughter immediately and welcomes her home.
What?
Yeah, the princess made it back, and she realized that it was her. The queen realized that it was her real daughter returned.
So all they did was just look at each other and they didn't exchange words?
No, they didn't even look at each other. They passed without knowing. They just passed each other and didn't notice.
Oh, okay then.
Yeah. And then the troll girl makes her way back to the troll realms and finds a troll woman cursing loudly as she's working.
What?
That's what the story says, which, I understand. There are times I want to curse when I'm working too, so I get it, troll lady, I get it. But anyway, the troll girl declares that the troll woman is the most fun person she's ever met and wants to stay there.
What the hell am I hearing?
The troll girl just wants to have fun, and she thinks the troll woman being, free enough in her person to just curse as she's working is something fun.
So she finds a person pissed off?
Fun? Yeah, and thinks it's fun. But anyway, the troll woman turns out to be the troll girl's mother, and of course she's delighted that her daughter has returned. And so the princess and the troll are both back in their proper families, and they grow up happy, and they both end up getting married later on the same day.
Okay then. So she finds people that pissed off at their jobs fun.
Hey, apparently so. And hey, I can't fault the troll woman. Sometimes I want to curse when I'm working too.
All you gotta do, if she wants to find people who are fun like that, all you gotta do is go to the stock market. Find people who work at the stock market.
Yeah, granted, if I had to work with the stock market, I would be cursing all day too.
I mean, just go there. Just go to New York. You'll find fun people there. I'm just being honest.
Yep. Okay, that's why I had you here, for your honest reactions. All right, so moving on. Next story of the changelings. This one isn't directly related to changelings, but there are similarities. This is the story of Titty Mun.
What the hell did I just hear?
Titty Mun. He is a spirit of the fens, or wetlands and marshes, from England.
Okay. What?
Yeah, Titty Mun, that name literally means little man, and he's often described as a small, ghostly, or kind of old-looking figure who dwells near waterways and marshes.
Okay.
Yeah, he's considered to be a protector of the marshlands, but also a potential threat, embodying the precarious balance of life in the marshlands.
So he's like a wetlands protector?
Yes. Yeah, he's like the guardian of the what are basically the swamps over in England.
Does he travel to Louisiana?
I don't know that the Titty Mun has ever been to Louisiana, because remember, he's an English legend.
Well, does Louisiana have their own version of him?
That would be an interesting question to see if Louisiana does have their own version of Titty Mun. It wouldn't surprise me if they did.
So continue on with this dude.
But anyway, Titty Mun is supposed to be able to influence water levels and basically influence the health and welfare of the marshes. So, of course, when it floods or when crops failed, It was the Tittymun who was supposed to be at fault for that.
He's a waterbender?
He is a waterbender, apparently.
Oh,
Yes, Tittymun is a
and he
waterbender.
can control the weather?
Somewhat, at least.
So you're telling me all the people who said the government has been controlling the weather.
Yeah, so it's not the government that is
it's-
controlling the weather.
It's that man.
It's not Harp, it's Tittymun.
You're telling me you think he takes bribes?
Maybe. Well, actually, people were supposed to leave offerings to him, like milk, bread, and other food items, and they were supposed to be left near waterways.
I can give him $2
So people kind of did leave him bribes.
I can give him $2 and a pack of Skittles. I don't know how much US dollars are worth in England, but they should be worth something.
What is he gonna do with a pack of Skittles?
Eat them?
Okay, just don't throw your wrapper in the marshlands. Tittymun isn't gonna like littering.
Hey, he's got to deal with that. I'm giving him a full bag of Skittles.
So the wrapper's his problem.
Yeah, that's his fault.
Okay.
That's in the contract.
All right. But anyway, so yeah, his connection to changeling folklore. So obviously, if he is the guardian and protector of the marshlands, if a child got lost out in the marshlands, it was said that the Tittymun took him.
I call BS. You think that old man could kidnap a child?
Remember, he's not just an old man. He's like a spirit of the marshlands.
Well,
He just looks kind of like a small old man.
Well, you think he has time to kidnap people?
He might. And also, if a child got sick after wandering or playing in the marshes, most likely just because if they ran into some plant or something out there that made them sick. But if they got sick after playing in the marshes, it was thought that the Tittymun cursed them or is punishing them somehow for something they did to the marshlands that he didn't like.
Or just blaming him for everything, like Lucifer. This is unfair. He needs to start rioting.
Aww.
Why is he taking this abuse?
Hey, people had to blame something for when there was flooding in the marshlands or when their crops failed.
Nobody could blame themselves?
People didn't understand a lot of environmental factors at that time, Derek.
That
and
is
so
fair.
they blamed the Tittymun.
That is fair. But why would we blame him? What does he have to do?
Because he was the one who was said to control the marshlands.
What is he sleeping on that day it flooded?
Hey, we don't know.
He slept in, it flooded, that ain't his fault.
If he slept in when he was supposed to be awake taking care of the marshlands, then they would say it absolutely is his fault.
Oh, shit.
But anyway, on to the devil's baby.
I thought, is that the Antichrist?
No, the devil's baby's not the Antichrist. It's like a changeling story. Yeah, it's primarily a German story, and it's a baby that is supposed to have been born with some sort of physical abnormalities, like claws, sharp teeth, glowing red eyes, or other animal-like features.
So he could be the Antichrist and a werewolf at the same time.
The devil's baby story could be, yes, the Antichrist and the werewolf baby at the same time, at least in appearance.
Okay, then.
But anyway, the particular version of the devil's baby I want to talk about is one that actually came up here in America.
Ooh.
Yes, in Chicago.
Of course, Chicago.
So, yes, in Chicago during the early 20th century, like early 1900s, the legend of a devil baby gained prominence. There was supposed to be a devil baby that was said to be born to a Catholic mother and a blasphemous atheist father.
Of course.
Yes. So the baby was cursed to have horns, hooves, and a tail.
So the Antichrist.
The Antichrist doesn't necessarily have horns, hooves, and a tail.
He could.
He could, but not necessarily. But anyway, rumors of this baby started circulating, and legend claimed that the baby was hidden at a place called Hull House, which was a famous settlement house in Chicago.
That just sounds like a prison.
No, settlement houses were not prisons. Settlement houses were a movement that began in the 1800s and really peaked around 1920, both in the United Kingdom and the United States. And they were kind of an early version of welfare and other social programs prior to those actually being established. So the idea was that they would establish big houses in lower economic areas with the idea of bringing the upper and lower classes together. So they build these big houses. They'd have people kind of from the middle class workers come volunteer to live in these houses and provide services like daycare, English classes for immigrants who didn't know English well, and healthcare to help improve the lives of the poor in those areas.
Okay, so not a prison.
Not a prison. Not a prison, kind of an early version of welfare and other social help systems.
Okay, taking notes here.
I don't know. Are you taking notes?
Yeah, I am.
Oh, you are? Well, good for you. And so, yes, this Hull House was run by Jane Addams. And she was well known for running this Hull House. She was one of the best settlement house workers at the time.
Did she win an MVP? Was she the most?
She did win an MVP for settlement houses, actually. Well, I mean, she didn't really win any, but she was kind of the settlement house MVP. She was very well known for this one. But anyway, she noticed this attraction to this devil baby story because somehow rumor got started that this devil baby and the mother were living at the Hull House.
Okay.
And so she'd have just dozens of women, usually old women, gathering around the house every day trying to come in and see the baby.
What the hell?
Yes. Yes, there were people every day coming to the Hull House wanting to see the devil baby because rumors circulated around so much that this baby was there at the Hull House. And there's no evidence that there was any such baby there.
Did she let him in?
No, she didn't. But she did write about it extensively and write about this weird fascination that people had with this devil baby story.
Hold on. I just gotta say this. I would have let him in. I would charge him like $10 to come see the devil baby. And every other day I would just change the kid. Just show a different kid. I would just show a different kid. And you know what I would do? I would just say, hey man, he shapeshifts. I felt
Oh god, now make the devil baby a shapeshifter.
so you know what? I put a little marker on his crib to see what he actually is. So say it's a devil baby right here, so I know, so I don't pick up the wrong kid. He just shapeshifts every day. So one day you might
you are deviously enterprising sometimes.
Everybody has to have a side hustle these days.
But anyways, let's go back to Jane Addams here. Yeah, she wrote about it extensively because she was just fascinated by this weird fascination that people seem to have with the devil baby. So here's a little bit of what she said about it. That the old women who came to visit the devil baby believed that the story would secure them a hearing at home was evident. As they prepared themselves with every detail of it, their old faces shone with a timid fascination. In the midst of their double bewilderment, both that the younger generation were walking in such stranger paths and that no one would listen to them, for one moment there flickered up that last hope of a disappointed life, that it may at least serve as a warning while affording material for exciting narrations. The story of the devil baby evolved today as it might have been centuries before in response to the imperative needs of anxious wives and mothers, recalled the theory that woman first fashioned the fairy story, that combination of wisdom and romance in an effort to tame her mate and make him a better father to her children, until such stories finally became a rude creed for domestic conduct, softening the treatment that men accorded to women. Because the devil baby embodied an undeserved wrong to a poor mother, whose tender child had been claimed by the forces of evil, his merely reputed presence had power to attract to Hull House hundreds of women who had been humbled and disgraced by their children, mothers of the feeble-minded, of the vicious, of the criminal, of the prostitute.
So, could you break down this for me? I didn't buy premium English.
You didn't buy premium English. Basically, she's saying that this is a fascinating example of stories like the changelings and stuff, and the hold that they have over women, and the worries that they have over having children. That something's going to be wrong with their child, that their child is going to grow up healthy, that their child is going to grow up to be criminal in some way, and also ways to try to placate husbands that might otherwise not be very good people to them into being better husbands and fathers.
Okay, then.
Yes, so she was kind of like an early folklore historian in a way, an unintentional early folklore historian. So good on you, Jane Addams.
I just have a question.
Yes.
How long are subscriptions for premium English?
Start reading more and you can have a lifelong subscription to premium English.
Fair enough.
But anyway, yeah, another actual real life case of a changeling. Charles I of England, who lived from 1600 to 1649, was rumored to be a changeling.
Whoa.
Yes, due to his, quote, peevish nature as a child. And also a nursemaid story that a dark figure had mysteriously appeared by the baby's bed and cast a dark cloak over his cradle.
What the hell does peevish mean?
Kind of not very social, kind of fussy and...
Hey, I don't blame him.
Yeah, losing words, but yeah, fussy, temperamental, not necessarily social and liking of people.
I wouldn't blame him. The royal family's kind of annoying.
Yeah, can't blame him for that. But anyway, Charles I, eventually became Charles I, King of England, was the second son of King James VI of Scotland and Anne of Denmark, and was first cousin twice removed of Elizabeth I. Yeah, Henry VIII's daughter, Queen of England, Elizabeth I.
Okay.
But anyway, he was a sickly child. He was always sick as a child, and he was born in Scotland, but his parents and older siblings left for England in 1603, but Charles was deemed too weak to make the journey.
How did they determine this?
Well, he had trouble walking. He couldn't really walk very well, and it wasn't until a year later, in 1604, when Charles was 3.5, that he could finally walk the length of the Great Hall without assistance.
I don't think that's a good determination if somebody's well enough to travel.
Hey, they had to work with what they could determine at the time. Remember, this is in the 1600s, okay? Medical technology and medical understanding is not what it is today.
Fair enough, but...
So they had to go with, okay, well, he can't even walk the length of the Great Hall on his own. He, traveling would probably not be very good for him, but when he could finally do it on his own, all right, it's probably good enough for him to get to travel to England.
All right.
And so he arrived, he joined his family in England, and he was placed under the care of Sir Robert and Lady Elizabeth Carey. And they still, even though he could walk the length of the Great Hall by himself, had special boots made for him out of a special tough leather from Spain and brass supports to help support his ankles.
Suspicious.
Yes. But also his speech was very underdeveloped and slow, and he had a stammer for the rest of his life.
He sounds like a lizard person.
No, he's not a lizard person. He's supposed to be a changeling, not a lizard person.
What if the lizards took him, though?
Okay, we can do a different podcast on the reptilians, but this is not the reptilian podcast.
Fair enough.
But anyway, Charles eventually overcame his physical challenges in adulthood, and historians now speculate that he probably suffered from rickets.
Rickets?
Rickets.
Oh, rickets. I thought you said crickets.
No, rickets. It is a disease that affects your bones and makes your bones very weak and fragile, especially in children, caused by a vitamin D deficiency.
I have D supplements. Does he need some?
Charles I probably needed them, yes.
Well, I think he's dead now, so...
Yeah, I don't think our vitamin D supplements today are going to help him, but it sounds like he probably needed them.
Huh. Rickets.
Yes, rickets.
I really thought you said crickets.
No.
That boy has the rickets.
Charles I probably did.
Well, Charles I, if you're listening from beyond the grave, I don't know if you are or not. I don't know if we can confirm that either. I have these supplements if you're still suffering.
So, yeah, I mean, but Charles I was a royal child, so nothing happened to him. Other people who were thought to be changelings were not so lucky, because they didn't have the benefit of being a royal.
I don't think it matters if you're royal or not.
They're not going to do anything to a royal child, but if you're just a common person, there were some cruel and horrific things that they did to people they thought they were changelings, and we're going to talk about some of these in just a minute.
I just have a question.
Yes.
What if they were going to make the swap on my kid, and all I did was stay up all night? They couldn't make the swap because I would be throwing hands.
What did you just say?
If they tried to come in and take my child and replace it, I would start throwing hands. I would start trying to punch them.
Oh, the swap. Okay, that's what you said. I couldn't tell what you said.
See, you're the dumb one here. You could understand what I was saying.
No. But yes, I'm sure if parents actually ever saw fairies trying to take their child, they would want to throw hands with them.
See, I have the regular version of English, and apparently you can't understand the regular version.
All right. But anyway, yeah, on to these more cruel versions of what happened to people suspected of changelings. In 1826, an Irish woman named Anne Roche became convinced that a 4-year-old boy that she was taking care of, named Michael Leahy, who was unable to speak or stand, was a changeling.
Is that where Michael Jackson got the hee-hee thing from his last name?
No! Good Lord, child, no.
I was just asking a question.
No, Michael Leahy is not where Michael Jackson's came from.
It sounds pretty similar.
It's not his fault that his name is Leahy, okay? But anyway, she became convinced that Michael was a changeling because he was 4 years old and unable to speak or stand, which we now recognize today would be some sort of congenital, delayed development.
Yeah.
But at the time, in 1826, changeling. So she took him to the Flesk, which was a river in Ireland, and bathed him in the river.
Okay.
She did this 3 times, and the 3rd time that she bathed him in the river, Michael drowned.
Well, we're on the 3rd time. I thought 3rd time was the charm. 3rd time equal death here.
For all the versions of this I found, they don't say what specifically went wrong on the 3rd time. It just says that the 3rd time he was bathed in the river, he drowned.
So people, 3rd time is not the charm. 3rd time equals death.
3rd time was not the charm here.
I didn't know where you want to do math questions here.
It's just that it's not a math question, my dude.
Well, if you take 3rd time is the charm minus 3rd time equals death, you get 3rd time. Or something like that. I don't know what I'm talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about either. But anyway, Anne was charged with Michael's murder, but the whole time she claimed that she was merely trying to drive the fairy out of him.
I'm just very curious what went wrong the 3rd time. Was the river stream just hide that thing?
I would love to know what happened the 3rd time too, but I haven't been able to find any more details on this story than that.
Well, you know what happened to it in my mind?
The
river was pretty strong that day, and she dropped them or something. I don't know.
Yeah, something went wrong the 3rd time. But this just shows how prevalent and how genuine beliefs in changelings were at the time, because Anne said she was just trying to drive the fairy out of him. She didn't intend to kill Michael, and the jury acquitted her of murder.
She got away with murder.
They let her go. They said she was genuine in her belief that she was trying to get rid of the fairy and not intending to kill him, and they acquitted her.
So you're telling me somebody could stab a person and say, oh, they're a changeling, and then boom, they got away with murder?
Well, stabbing was not a usual method of getting rid of the changelings. So if you were stabbing somebody, that probably wasn't going to work for you.
Oh, never mind then.
But yeah, one of the most tragic changeling stories is the story of Bridget Cleary.
Bridget Clearly?
Bridget Cleary.
Okay.
So her story is sometimes called the last witch burning in Ireland.
What?
Let's hear what happened to Bridget. So Bridget was a 26-year-old Irish woman, and she married a man named Michael Cleary. And Bridget was described as independent, attractive, and somewhat unconventional for her time. She didn't have children. She was financially secure herself without being married because she earned money as a dressmaker and egg seller, which was unusual for women at the time, and was reportedly more educated than many women in her community.
I'm just gonna take a wild guess here. Her husband cooked her at $3.50.
Jesus, Derek. Well, I mean, she did end up burning, but
I'm just taking a.
she did end up burning, yes, as you probably surmised from the last witch burning of Ireland, but we will get to that.
I was just taking a wild guess.
Anyway, in March of 1895, Bridget became ill. Likely, it was likely something like pneumonia, bronchitis, or tuberculosis. So she was probably coughing, probably had a lot of congestion if they thought it was pneumonia, bronchitis, or tuberculosis.
She probably got the flu first then.
It might have been the flu. It very well might have. But her illness got worse, leading to weakness and erratic behavior. And during this time, her husband, Michael, and several others in the community began to suspect that Bridget was no longer Bridget and had been replaced with a changeling.
I thought only kids be changed.
No, remember way back at the beginning, I said it's usually kids who are taken, but it can be anyone.
I didn't take my notes there.
Well, that's on you, but yes, changelings are usually children, but it can be anyone.
So this can't get worse from here.
Oh, it gets worse. Like you just said, you thought she was gonna be cooked at 350. Well, it gets worse. So, Bridget's family and neighbors, influenced by, of course, the changeling myths and local fairy doctors who were supposed to know how to get rid of changelings.
They had fairy doctors?
They had people called fairy doctors who were supposedly knowledgeable in how to get rid of changelings. So at first, she was given herbal concoctions that were supposed to expel the fairy influence, but she's sick. These herbal concoctions didn't do anything for her. So since she remained sick, oh, well, she's still a changeling. So then they took it up a notch. And since the herbal remedies didn't work, they went on to abuse. Michael forced Bridget to consume milk that had been mixed with urine and subjected her to physical abuse. Like I talked about, everything from whipping all the way up to ovens. Any sort of physical abuse was meant to force the fairies to exchange their people back.
I just wonder how we go from whipping to ovens.
Well, it was just a ritual that was supposed to get rid of them. And on March 15th of 1895, that's when the situation really escalated. In a fit of rage, Michael held Bridget near the fireplace, shouting that he was going to burn the changeling out of her and force the fairies to return his real wife. But he set Bridget on fire, causing her death.
Holy shit.
Yes.
What part of the body?
The stories are not that specific. They just say he held her near the fire and she caught on fire and burned.
I'm gonna guess her head caught on fire.
Probably started with her head. But anyway, Bridget's body, he buried her in a shallow grave near their home. And a week or so later, after people noticed that Bridget had disappeared, they finally figured out that she had died and the husband had buried her out back of their home.
Wait, his name was Michael, right?
Yes.
What if this is Michael Afton's grandfather?
Michael who?
Afton.
Who is Michael Afton?
Oh, it's a character from Five Nights at Freddy's who created the animatronics. And killed all those kids.
Oh.
To make the animatronics. It's Michael Afton's grandfather.
I don't think the Five Nights at Freddy's people thought that far into their folklore to make this Michael that guy's grandfather.
Well, you know what? I was just taking a wild guess.
If you want that to be your personal headcanon for Five Nights at Freddy's, go ahead.
Well, there's a lot of lore for that game.
But anyway, back to Bridget's unfortunate case. The case, fortunately, most of Ireland was shocked by this case, and it garnered widespread attention. So Michael Cleary and several others who had been involved in the, quote, rituals to get rid of the changeling and get the real Bridget back were arrested. Michael was convicted of manslaughter. They went for murder, but he was only convicted of manslaughter.
I think they could have got murder.
He got manslaughter because the court acknowledged his genuine belief in the changeling myth, and he was sentenced to 20 years of basically prison servitude, but was released after 15 years. And the other participants got lesser sentences for their roles. It doesn't say. I couldn't find what exactly sentences they got, but it was lesser sentences.
Okay, then.
But yes, Bridget's story became a symbol of the dangers of superstition and the social pressures of her time. And of course, there are theories that her husband, Michael, never really believed in the changeling myth, that he was just an abusive piece of shit and used the changeling myth as a convenient excuse to cover up his abuse and eventual murder of his wife.
Most likely.
So, yeah, that's very likely what happened.
So, that story was kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's one of the more gruesome and tragic changeling stories, and yeah, that's a wild one.
I really wonder.
Yes.
Can it get worse from here?
No, that is the worst individual story.
Well, you should say that one for last.
That is the last one. That's the last story that we've got. The only thing we've got left on changelings is possible explanations for what changelings are. The most obvious being medical conditions. Conditions like autism, cerebral palsy, or Down syndrome were likely things that would have been that we understand today simply as medical conditions.
Mm-hmm.
That back when these stories took place in the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, they didn't understand.
That's most likely the case, but I just want to say they're aliens.
We will do other things on aliens, but yeah, no, changelings are not aliens.
Changelings are not aliens, it's confirmed.
Not aliens. Different folklore. But yeah, also sort of just as these stories are also just reflections of anxieties that parents feel, especially if they're a first parent. Remember, back in this time, medical technology is not what it was, and neither was sanitation. So infant mortality rates were much higher. And so changeling myths were like an external representation of fears parents faced about both the dangers of pregnancy and the dangers often present to very young children at the time.
Yeah, those two do not work. I don't believe that. I don't believe that.
You don't believe what?
What you just said.
What? It's not an explanation for what changelings are. It's just an explanation for why the myths exist.
So we're gonna fear people into burning their kids alive?
Okay, yeah, the stories I don't think had the desired effect, but that they were just representations of fears people had and not knowing how else to explain them.
Well, clearly those stories involved murder.
Yes, they did.
So I think their stories were wrong because you were trying to scare people, but you scared them enough that they burned people alive. I'm just more concerned about cooking their kids at 350.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, changeling myths have still persisted, and it's still in modern media. Like you mentioned Peter Pan, I hadn't even thought of that one, which I can't believe I didn't. But there have been several movies about changelings specifically. There was one in 1980 just called The Changeling, one called The Hallow in 2015, and another called The Hole in the Ground in 2019. And then, of course, also there is the classic 1986 The Labyrinth, which is sort of a changeling myth because we have Jareth the Goblin King coming to take the younger brother. Gosh, I can't remember. It's been too long since I've watched that movie. I can't remember their names now.
I was going to say Krampus is one of them.
Krampus is something different. He's not a changeling.
Fair enough.
When it gets closer to Christmas, we'll do a whole thing on Christmas myths and we can talk about Krampus.
Christmas is a while away.
Hey, it is what it is. We'll talk about Krampus when we get to Christmas.
Krampus hates kids.
He does, but he just takes them. He doesn't leave a replacement, so he's not a changeling guy.
Fair enough. Does he eat them?
Krampus does eat them sometimes.
They had that really bad horror movie, I think, from 2016 about Krampus.
Yes, they did. But anyway, we're getting close up to an hour now, so we'll have to leave the Green Children of Woolpit and the Black-Eyed Children for our next episode because we spent longer on changelings than I thought we would.
Yeah, that's on you.
All right, well, that's it for our first episode, and thank you for listening.
Yeah.